One of the interesting things about being an art teacher, a private art teacher that deals with students all day, every single day, is you start to recognize patterns that are coming up with the youth. Now, every generation before is going to complain about the generation to come, but I don't really believe in the idea of complaining about them because here's what I think. Here's what I think about you guys watching this video. I think it doesn't matter what age you are. God has placed you on this earth at this time for a reason. And if you put that into perspective and you think about the things happening in the world, the things, the distractions, the tools, the adversities that we face today in this world right now, which surpass any generation, you have to feel and understand and recognize, you have to feel in your heart the magnitude of the calling God has called you to. But here's the issue. The greater you are, the greater your spirit is, the greater your purpose is, the greater the opposition has to be to offset or to combat your abilities and capabilities. Now, I'm saying this because Satan is very crafty. He's very skillful. We know this. He's had a whole entire generation, and he's been preparing not for the generations before, but for the generations right now. This whole entire eternity, he's been preparing for you. Now, let's not forget that Satan has not crossed this veil that we have. We've crossed this veil of forgetfulness and we've forgotten everything from this life before, right? We've forgotten everything from this spiritual world that we came from. But Satan has not. And he has a full understanding of each individual person. Not as a mortal would understand a person, but as a spirit would understand a person. Which means just like God, he understands you as an individual almost perfectly. He has a pretty fair idea of the decisions you'll make, the positions you'll be in, the family you're with, and exactly how he can utilize the people and the surroundings around you to combat the abilities that you have. So now I want to talk about some things, some commonalities I've seen amongst young men, and even from myself when I was growing up and going through high school and junior high and all that. One commonality I've seen, I want to tell you guys a story. There is a young boy in one of my art classes, okay, who I love and respect a lot. He is really quite a cool kid. And he's really young. He's one of the youngest students that we have, and I can tell he is going places. 100%. But I've noticed something, and it's something that all boys go through. And it was just kind of a reminder to me of how I felt growing up, especially being in this community here in Utah where everybody is Christian, everybody believes in God. And they try to follow Christ to a T, the very best they can. But they misunderstand one of these character attributes that I see in most of these kids. And they misunderstand it, and they're taught a certain way, and they're programmed by their parents. And this is what it is. Kindness. All young boys, all men are taught to be kind, to be extremely kind, and sometimes overly kind, to the point where these kids, out of trying to be kind, will let people walk on them and treat them like a doormat. This is not how men are supposed to be. This is completely opposite of the role of a man in this world. God has set apart men and women with their own abilities, their own authority, their own everything right there. It's a whole entire different world for each of us. We're completely different, but in value, the same. And men need to become leaders. And you read the Bible and you'll see that this is a commonality you'll see, that men must be leaders. Now, leaders now to be a leader isn't to usurp authority over anyone. Don't get me wrong, right? It is not to be greater than anybody else or to fit this modern idea that we've been sold that of this patriarchy, right? Which, in a way, I think we've twisted the idea of what the patriarchy should be. What I'm trying to get at is this. Fathers are not stepping up. Let me share some statistics. 80% of the criminals in prison today grew up without fathers. 80% of school grew up without fathers. That statistic remains the same. And there are very specific communities in the United States and in the world that commit a significantly higher amounts of crime than the rest of the world. And 80% of them grew up without fathers too. The importance of a father in the development of their sons and their daughters is immeasurable, just like it would be for the mother, right? What the mother does is also immeasurable. We cannot fathom how valuable a mother is. Now, the thing is, I think mothers are doing their jobs really well, but I think men in this day and age are facing a lot of opposition. Okay, it's in the food we eat, it's in the drinks we drink, it's in the microplastics that float around in our pipe systems and come out of your faucet into your cup and into your mouth and into your system, right? It's the soybean oil, right? It's the seed oils. All these things are constantly producing high amounts of estrogen in your body. So therefore, men are not becoming more masculine, they're becoming more feminine. Now, this is an old idea. So no wonder why women are becoming so frustrated with men in this modern day and age. No wonder why they're becoming so frustrated, because women are having to step up and take this masculine role, which is not designed by God, and they're trying to raise their children. And in result, they're raising their boys like they're women. They're raising their boys like they're little girls. And they're telling you, you need to be kind to everybody. You need to be accepting of everybody. And they teach you these things over and over and over again, while continuously confusing the idea of kindness with submission, which is a feminine trait. Kindness is not submission. Let me tell you another story. And I'll continue with this boy. This boy, he always talks about how his goal is to be kind. And I've always respected that. His goal has always been to be kind, and there's nothing wrong with that. His parents teach him that he should be kind, that he should be loving, that he should be accepting of everybody. And that's good. These things are just genuinely good. That's why we want to do them. That's why we seek to be better at being, at fulfilling these attributes. But here's where I saw it twist this past week, in which a girl came up to him and she asked, "Can I ruin your picture?" And he looked at her and he said, "It would hurt my feelings if you did, but if you wanted to, I guess you could." And obviously she didn't ruin his picture because she's joking with him. She has this crush on him, right? Because he's a good looking kid. He's a good looking, fun kid. But that's not going to translate well when he gets older, right? That won't translate well at all when he gets older. And then I saw this continue to progress. As the class went on, I saw these girls, because they have a crush on him, they're teasing him, they're joking with him. But because he's just trying to be kind, trying to be accepting, he's letting them step and walk all over him, until finally escalates to the moment and a girl punches him. No joke, this happened in my art class. And I see this all happen and I'm like, oh my goodness. Just moments before, I sat down with him and I said, you know what? It's really good to be kind, but to be kind doesn't mean that you have to let people mess with you. It doesn't mean you can't say no. You can say no and still be kind, right? That's what I told him. He didn't understand this and he says, well, I just want to be nice. And I walked away and then it finally escalated and he got hit. And of course he's like, ouch. And his sister has to walk in to defend him. Because these girls don't have men in their lives. These girls don't have men in their lives, so they have to step up and be men. That's what's happening in this world right now. That's what's happening in this world right now. We are robbing women of their ability to rise up and fulfill their divine calling because we aren't fulfilling our own divine calling. And we can blame it on a lot of things, and even the school system is to blame in a lot of ways. With the way they organize the classrooms, where boys need to be out in the field, they need to be physically doing things and working with their hands. Sitting in a classroom is a feminine trait. That's how women learn. That is the best way statistically for women to learn, not for men. In fact, that's the best way. When little boys are in class and they're at that young age, in this developmental cycle where they're learning everything in it, and they're like sponges. They're also producing more testosterone than they will in years. And this testosterone comes out in the form of like anxiety. That's how it feels. So that's why these boys that get up on their tables and they're jumping around, they're climbing trees, they're beating each other up. It's all this testosterone that's pent up. And then you put them in a class and you tell them to shut up and be silent. And so then what happens to this boy developmentally? He learns that it is not good to handle business. It is not good to fight, which will then, those experiences, fighting, eventually this translates eventually when they're fathers and when they're older brothers, right? This translates to defending. They have to be confident in this ability of defense. They have to. Otherwise, a man ceases to be a man. A boy never becomes a man. Let me give you another example. Another boy I used to teach many, many years ago, the sweetest kid I ever met. And as a young boy, it's kind of cute. It's fun. And I love this kid. I'm like, this is one of the most wholesome kids I've ever met. And I'm like, I can tell he's going places. He's a good looking kid. He's definitely going to be very popular, right? Well, things took a shift because I've also heard that his father is the nicest guy in the world, right? Things took a shift as he got older because He was taught that he needed to be kind and nice to everybody. He needed to be accepting just like this other little boy. So I watched kids walk on him over and over again. He finally quits. And then he has to move schools because he's getting bullied like crazy. Then finally when high school comes around, he's back in the school with all these kids. And they don't respect him because he cannot hold his ground. He cannot hold his ground. He can't handle a joke. He can't handle it when someone teases him. So finally one day he snaps, yells the N-word out of trying to compensate for what he doesn't have or what he can't do, for the lack of the abilities that he requires in that time in his life. And now he's suddenly in all this trouble and everybody's bullying him. The depression that would bring in your life, right? To feel absolutely ostracized and cast out. Men, stop being so kind. Kindness is a trait that all people should have. Everybody should be kind and loving, but don't confuse kindness with submissiveness. Christ was not submissive. If you look at Christ, his number one attribute was kindness. When you talk about Jesus Christ, you know that he is loving and kind. But let's not forget the example that he set for us in the scriptures. He did not teach us to be submissive, to be doormats under the feet of these men and women, all of our peers. This man went against the law actively. He was an outlaw. He saw that the Jewish law was you couldn't heal on the Sabbath. You couldn't take a certain amount of steps on the Sabbath. You couldn't carry a bed mat on the Sabbath. And he healed on the Sabbath. He walked millions of steps. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Our 10,000 steps that we're counting on our Fitbits are nothing compared to what Jesus Christ did on an average day. And he healed all day, every day without breaks. He went against Jewish law. He went against Roman law. But at the same exact time, he knew to respect the law. Right? It's not that he was actively breaking or committing crimes. He was an honest man, full of principle and virtue. And when the time came, he would flip the tables in the temple to scare the merchants out of the temple, out of the house of the Lord. And he would rebuke these Pharisees, this authority, this Jewish authority in Jerusalem. And he would heal these Romans, which the Jews hated at the time. Until finally, you might say he got walked on. He was mistreated because he did what was right. But he never once let himself be the doormat under the foot of his peers. Nor would he ever stand for any injustice amongst someone else. If he saw that someone else was being mistreated, he would stand up and fight it, because that's what a man does. That is a responsibility and the duty of a man. And you do it even when you're not respected or loved. That's what brings glory. That's what brings power. That's what it means to fulfill your responsibilities as a man in this world. Now, I'm not going to just share all this and not tell you guys how you can combat this kindness that has been programmed in your brain in your adolescence. I'm not going to be there, okay? This is what I want to tell you guys. If you want to break this cycle of the nice guy mentality, you need to adopt a couple of things. You need to adopt one really hard practice every single day, one hard exercise, which is going to the gym. You need to go to the gym every single day. You need to work out and strain. It's not about straining your muscles and getting big. It's about straining your mind. Because when you do that, then when someone comes to you and they say, hey, can I destroy your picture? Can I key your car? You'll be able to defend that. When a man breaks into your home with your wife and children, you won't be afraid because you've mentally strained, you've exercised your mind so fervently that your first response is to get up and fight. We've lost the warrior way. Men, every single one of us, we have not survived to this day without our ancestors being behind a sword and shield. Not a single one of us. My ancestors were Vikings. I assume deep down in the Celts, they're the Scots. They're nomads who would travel around and they would fight for their families, fight for their freedom. Some of my ancestors came here on the Mayflower, right? And they had to fight for their freedom, fight for their rights, and they had to fight for their family. The role and the responsibility of a man has never changed in our history or in our time. I'll tell you what has changed though, the tactics of our adversaries. Because they know that if they can keep a man weak, if they can train him from the ages of 1 to 8, when he's in his adolescence in the theta brain wavelength, when he's the easiest to program, that he will never stand up for himself, that he will be spineless for the rest of his life, and he will let everybody walk all over him. This is the way the world is going. If you need to become a man, if you know you have to become a man, you need to rise up. And you want to be able to get the girls, you want to get the friends, you want to get the respect, you want to gain the power of your own brand and build a business empire that will sustain your family for the rest of eternity. You need to get this one thing right. Start your mental practices. Go to the gym every single day. Imagine your head when someone comes to fight you or to challenge you, you need to imagine how you're going to combat that. You need to also understand how kindness works. You need to understand the balance of kindness. You need to understand the balance that comes from kindness and sometimes being a little bit against, being the opposition. Something that I do that really boosts my confidence and also strengthens my relationships and develops respect in my life is I like to joke. And humor is the perfect way to be both kind, lovable, but also not a doormat. Sometimes when I'm teaching an art class and I'll have one kid talking to me, of course I'm a kind person. I want to see them succeed, but I'll just abruptly shock them and I'll say, hey, shut up real quick. And I love doing that because it shocks them. They're like, what? And then I say, oh, I'm just kidding. I'm like, let me come over to you. You know, and these are the things that you do, right? You want to shock people, say things that they're not used to hearing, and they will never, ever in their life mess with you. But you have to do it with mental control. That's the importance of going to the gym. You could do what that one kid said and blurt out the N-word, right? And lose all the respect of your peers and friends, maybe gain the respect of the wrong people, and ruin your life in the process. Unfortunately, people are very, very emotional and timid, right? Unfortunately, that's the way it is. But if you know how to do it, if you practice it enough, if you understand the communication of other people, and you spend more time observing how they speak and how they communicate and how they handle your humor, if you just test them here and there, then eventually you gain the power over them to lead them. And not to be the boss or the ruler, but to be the leader and the friend, the guidance. But I hope you guys got some value out of this and you understood the wisdom that is here in this world today, right? This is stuff that isn't hiding from you. You can go and you can find it, right? But if you want to take control of your life, take the things that I've said, take the feelings that you felt as I talked and apply them to your life. Each practice, each behavior that you need to develop takes one step, right? And if you can do this for 30 to 60 days, develop the habit, then your life will change forever. And you can completely reprogram your brain to be less of a doormat and more of a respective leader in this world today. My name is Gabriel Bowman. Appreciate you guys watching this video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you next Monday. Bye.